Hello and welcome to the Storytellers podcast, where we dive into the magic and mystery of all things spirituality, psychology, and of course, storytelling. I'm your host, Bela Divine. I'm a mentor, a mystic, a writer, an author, and above all else, I'm a storyteller. And so today I wanted to really take the time to tell you my story with how I developed confidence. Confidence has played such a big role in me being able to achieve most of the incredible feats and achievements that I have been able to accomplish in my lifetime. And beyond that, learning how to really create a sense of unshakable confidence within me that nobody can touch, even when I'm being criticized, even when other people don't like what I'm doing, even when people find me cringy, has been such a key ingredient in my happiness as well. So today we're going to be diving into all things unleashing your power and your confidence. And we're going to be talking about how to work through blocks like insecurity and unworthiness, which we all struggle with. So right away, I want to just ask you to take a moment to check in with yourself as you're listening to me speak. Is any part of you on your high horse? Is any part of you sitting here thinking, I don't really struggle with confidence, or I don't really struggle with insecurity that often? And if so, I want to ask you to step off of that high horse and to really just ground yourself into the reality that we all struggle with feeling worthy, with feeling good enough, with feeling insecure, with feeling confident in moments. I know I certainly struggled with feeling confident for a large part of my life, and at the same time, nobody knew that I was feeling this way. I've always been someone who seems really confident on the surface, but the reality is that for a large part of my life, I was deeply insecure, even though I wasn't acknowledging it, because I learned to pretend. I tried to hide it. It was almost like proof that I really wasn't worthy or that I should be insecure. I can pinpoint when I really started to feel insecure back to a specific point in my life. I was maybe like 10 years old, and I was at the community pool with my dad and with my friends, and all of a sudden these boys were saying, "What's that on your face, Bella? You have some spots on your face, ha ha ha." And they were laughing at me and making fun of me. And so I went to the bathroom and I looked at my face, and sure enough, I had these little white spots appearing on the right side of my face. So I went to my dad, he told me not to worry about it, and long story short, I ended up getting diagnosed with vitiligo. Vitiligo is an autoimmune disease or disorder is what they call it. I see it as a teacher and also an indicator that we've experienced more severe traumas. I developed vitiligo in response to my parents' divorce and the friction in my household and my inability to speak up about how I was really feeling. And so I believe that my vitiligo manifested as a little map on my face that made it really hard to hide my vulnerability. It made me really face the parts of myself that I wanted to hide. And more so, I really started to develop a lot of spots on my face with my vitiligo when I was about 11 or 12 years old. I had just hit puberty. I had bright green braces on. I did not think about how that would look, like there was food stuck in my teeth. It was not the cutest look. And I had accidentally bleached my hair orange with Sun-In. Sun-In is like the spray that lightens your hair, but if you have dark hair, your hair doesn't lighten to blonde. It lightens to like copper orange. So you can imagine I was the tallest girl in my class. I had already formed, like my figure was fully formed by the age of 12, and half of my face was white. And so naturally, the kids, as they do, made fun of me. And I really was struggling because all I wanted was to experience love, for the boys in my class to like me or to find me attractive. And simultaneously at home, my one example of love was completely falling apart with this custody battle and this divorce. And so I was in so much pain and I struggled with insecurity so much. And what happened was that 12-year-old me, as insecure and unworthy as she felt, and there were moments when that girl did not want to be here on this earth, and I'm so glad I stuck it out. But there was this deciding moment when that little girl decided that she was sick of being the victim. She was sick of being the victim of her circumstances that she couldn't control, and she wanted to take her healing and her happiness above all else into her own hands. And so while my dad took me to a makeup artist to teach me how to cover up my vitiligo, and I still love makeup to this day. So if you're watching the video, you might be able to see some of my vitiligo spots as I'm showing you. I do have a little bit of makeup on, and my vitiligo vitiligo's actually been going away on its own for the last like 10 years, and we'll talk about that shortly. But that little girl, that 12-year-old girl with spots on her face with green braces, she decided she was sick of being the victim, and she decided that she wanted to be her own hero and that she was going to take her happiness into her own hands. So at around 13 years old, me and my best friend decided that we were just going to experiment and be really rebellious. I got into the kind of scene, emo hardcore music scene. I started wearing eyeliner and chokers and all black, and I joined the boys baseball team and the boys wrestling team, and I just wanted to do everything outside of the box. And looking back, what I did is I gave myself full permission to experiment and explore my authenticity, and it was one of the greatest gifts I ever gave myself. And I look back on that little girl who went through so much suffering and how she was able to take her happiness into her own hands by seeing the rejection of others around her as almost a permission slip to be completely free. And so I became completely free for this part of my life. And funny enough, as soon as I decided to stop caring what other people thought, I kind of began to become beautiful. And my vitiligo started going away on its own. It was like as soon as I learned to accept it and love it, the lessons that it came to teach me said, okay, you know what? It's time for us to go. And so as I continue learning my lessons, my vitiligo continues filling in every year. And it takes quite a bit of time for skin cells to regenerate. I think it's like 7 years. So it makes sense. It's been a slower process. But what's so funny is that once I learned to love my authentic essence, I became magnetic to everyone around me. I actually began embodying confidence, and I wasn't pretending. I was just being myself, and I witnessed firsthand how magnetic that really is. And I feel like that confidence, that belief in myself, that acceptance of my scars and my differences was part of what made me so magnetic and attractive. But here's the thing, most people who struggle with unworthiness or insecurity take on this perspective of viewing themselves as if they were broken, as if they were an object in need of fixing. Most people, including myself at many points in my life, see themselves as the victims of their circumstances. So I want to share a really beautiful reframe with you. If you're someone who tends to see yourself as the victim of your problems, I want to encourage you to instead view your problems as the catalyst to change. Because if you can perceive your problems as catalysts for change, it is so much easier to really return back to your true essence and to your power. And don't feel bad if you're someone who has waited till things get to rock bottom to decide that you need to change things, because that's like most of us, right? Life happens and we say, okay, shoot, now I have to learn this lesson, now I have to evolve. And it can be painful and uncomfortable, like the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. And this messy, painful catalyst for change is actually present in all of nature. If you look at forest fires, they can seem so scary and bad on the surface, but when the burning of the forest is complete, the soil becomes rich with nutrients that then helps continue to grow life. And sticking with that metaphor of trees, if you look at trees, they go through seasonal changes every year where they shed all of their leaves and they go through this really intense transformation, but on the other side, they're able to bloom again. So if we look at nature and we see the changes that happen that are so beautiful to watch from a distance, we can observe that there's always this like struggle energy as you metamorphosize, as you transform, as you evolve into something else. And so I just want to remind you that if you're going through it right now, if you are in the midst of your own transformation, or if you're struggling to feel worthy, or if you're struggling to feel secure or confident or safe in your identity, you can choose to view that as a catalyst for change, and you can choose to begin prioritizing change now. And you know, it's interesting because all of us are actually born inherently knowing our worth. And humans are actually the only creatures on earth that question their worth. I mean, look at the trees, look at the animals. They're not sitting there questioning if they're good enough or not. You'll never see a cow sitting and contemplating if it's worthy or not. It just knows that it is. That inherent sense of worth is present in all of nature, except for humans, because humans learned how to judge. And our judgment polarizes polarizes things. We learn to see things as good versus bad, or right versus wrong, or beautiful versus ugly, when in reality, nothing is that simple. And when we try to put things into little boxes and we don't even fit into them, naturally we're going to feel unworthy because there is this split, there is this polarization. When the truth is that learning how to be really confident and learning how to know your worth is less about only acknowledging the light or only being in the positive expression of yourself. It's about knowing that true confidence comes when you learn to accept that every single person does have light and dark. Every single person has beautiful parts of them and has ugly parts of them. We are dualistic in nature. We are inherently perfect and we are imperfect. And that is what makes us human at the end of the day. And so when we begin to love all parts of us back into wholeness, when we can love the insecure part of ourselves, when we can love the part of ourselves that compares sometimes, when we can love the part of us that sometimes acts out and sabotages our happiness, and we can practice loving those parts of ourselves back to wholeness, only then can we truly experience confidence that no one can take away from us. So in part, it's about shifting the expectations that you have of yourself, and it's also about learning how to be more compassionate and empathetic. There are many studies in the world of inner child healing that have shown that the number one quality that children need to grow up and be healthy and happy and regulated and to feel safe and to not experience trauma is to receive lots of empathy from their parents. And so if your parents in any part of your life did not offer you as much empathy as your needy child self might have needed, it's really important that as an adult you take the time to give yourself that empathy and love that you didn't receive as a child, especially giving empathy to those parts of yourself that you have a tendency to hide or to reject or to pretend don't exist, like your insecurity. But going back to my earlier point, none of us are born insecure. When we're children, we have this inherent sense of I amness before we have trauma, right? So maybe if you had trauma starting from the get-go, you can imagine that pure soul essence of yourself that incarnated into your human body. That version of you, your pure, authentic soul, knows that it's worthy. But then you come into this world and you are exposed to so much polarization and judgment and beliefs about what's good versus bad. And you're taught that you must only be good and that you must never be bad. And because you are both, you're going to begin to feel inner rejection and insecurity about the parts of yourself that aren't always positive and light. We learn insecurity by observing the judges of the world. We learn insecurity from our school teachers, from our parents, from our friends, from the first formative relationships we have, the people who teach us what's attractive versus unattractive, what's right versus wrong. And we agree to these perceptions of the world, even if we're not totally conscious of what we're agreeing to. And then that becomes how we experience reality and how we experience and see ourselves. And we all unconsciously agree to certain beliefs that we don't really truly agree with when we're children because we don't know better and because we're kind of indoctrinated and conditioned into the way that society works. And so as adults, a big part of our work is to become aware of those beliefs and to reprogram our subconscious to think more supportive thoughts. So as you're listening to this, I really want you to just take a moment to consider what you struggle with the most. Do you have a harsh inner critic? Do you struggle with insecurity, with feeling confident? Do you struggle with comparison or imposter syndrome or self-doubt? Just take a moment to think about what you struggle with the most. Do you struggle to trust yourself? In fact, almost all of our emotional wounds at their core, when we boil down to the root of them, are worthiness wounds that we learned in childhood. And I think that this is really helpful to know because when we get lost in the story and we're circling over and over again in our minds, trying to find solutions, trying to figure out through our minds what we're feeling, we have a tendency to make issues bigger and more complicated than what they really are. And most of the time, it's a sense of unworthiness that stems from somewhere in your childhood. So I want to share with you a tool that I love to come to whenever I find myself getting triggered emotionally. I like to take a moment to first notice that I'm triggered, observe my trigger, and then then I asked myself, when was the first time that I remember feeling this way? And I'll give you a specific story. One morning I woke up and I went up to my boyfriend Nick and I started telling him about my writing and all these things that I was excited about. And he wasn't really listening. And so when I asked him to repeat back what I said, he was like, sorry, I wasn't listening. And I felt myself get really triggered and hurt and to begin to feel unimportant. And I went to my office and I sat and I asked myself, okay, I'm triggered right now. When was the first time that I felt this way? And I thought back to my childhood, to all of the times when I would try to tell something to my mom or my dad and they wouldn't listen to me. And I remembered going up to my dad and trying to share something that I was excited about with him and him just telling me, shh. And that really stuck with me and it made me feel like my voice wasn't important. So then, without getting stuck in the story, I like to ask myself, okay, now what did I need then and what do I need now to feel heard and to meet this need myself, this need to be heard? And so I got in front of my mirror and I gave myself a pep talk about how my voice is important and how I deserve to be heard. And I self-soothed myself and I made myself feel like I was important, and I went through healing that worthiness wound pretty simply. And then once I felt calm and regulated without snapping at my partner, I was able to go talk to him and tell him why him not listening triggered me and, how much it hurt because of something that I went through in my own childhood, and that allowed him to really kind of be there for me and promise to listen more effectively. So I share this with you because one of the most powerful things that I've learned about confidence is that you maintain your sense of confidence when you're doing a few things. The first is when you notice that you have an unmet need or you're feeling unworthy, knowing that you have the capacity to meet almost every single one of your needs all by yourself. And there is nothing more empowering than this. If you're craving affection, you can sit and love on your body. If you're craving to be heard, you can talk to yourself in the mirror. Like Miley Cyrus says, you can buy yourself flowers, right? Most of the time when you're struggling to feel worthy or to feel confident or empowered, it's because you are giving your power away by placing emphasis on external circumstances or people or situations being responsible for your sense of worthiness, your sense of inner peace, your sense of power or confidence, when your power is inherent. And not everyone is going to like you. You are not for everyone. Maybe you're like olives and you're an acquired taste. Olives are great, but they're not for everyone. But you are going to be led to the things that are meant for you when you're being more of yourself. And the best way to learn to be comfortable being all of yourself is to practice meeting your own needs as they arise. Now, it sounds simple in theory. It definitely takes work to get to the place where you recognize, oh, hey, I'm triggered. Oh, okay, like some need from childhood or from my past is arising, and okay, cool. Now I'm going to practice meeting it myself. But if you take these tips and you integrate them, I promise that you'll be able to return back to that state of empowerment and confidence that is available to all of us when we really tap into how to create it. And lastly, I want to share with you all one of my favorite personal tips when it comes to being confident. When I think of confident women that I look up to, I think of Rihanna. Rihanna is so beautiful, so confident, so like effortlessly cool. I've always just admired her, and she's a Pisces like me. And there's this meme of Rihanna where someone asks her, how do you manage to be so confident every day? And she goes, pretend. And I would like to add my revision to this. I don't think that you learn confidence by pretending, but I think you learn confidence through practicing arriving in a posture where you look and feel confident, by practicing breathing, by becoming aware of your breath while you're speaking and taking pauses when you need to think of what to say next. When I was first getting comfortable public speaking, and I've done many public speaking engagements, and I have done Zoom calls with thousands of people from all around the world, and at first this used to be really, really scary for me, but part of what helped me get confident in this was envisioning my highest self and kind of reflecting on how she would speak, what would her body language be like, and practicing embodying her, and practicing embodying other confident, empowered women like Rihanna, like Beyonce, like Taylor Swift, or these powerhouse women that we see in the media that always look so happy and confident. I started practicing embodying that energy. I started taking confidence walks where I would put on my like happy, healthy girl playlist full of empowering music that was like just inspiring, and I would strut down the street and imagine that I was walking into my new reality. And eventually I arrived, right? Eventually one day I woke up up. And that confidence that I practiced for years and years and that I still practice to this day kind of became ingrained in my subconscious and in my body. And now it's just kind of a part of who I am and how I move through the world. And of course, I, like everyone else, have moments where I still get triggered and feel insecure. Only now I come back to my tools, the same tools that I teach my clients. And if I notice that I feel unworthy or insecure, I reflect on what needs of mine need to be met so that I can remember my innate perfection and worthiness and wholeness. And I take care of myself and I honor those needs. And then I come back into my power stronger and stronger every time. So I hope that you enjoyed today's podcast episode all around how to unleash your power. I definitely have so much more to say on this subject. So if you have any questions or any thoughts on the topic or anything that you would like to see me share about next, definitely do let me know. And if you leave a review on this podcast, you can email hello@beladivine.com and my team will send you a free meditation as a thank you. Your reviews mean the world. And thank you so much for tuning in and listening. And I'll catch you in the next episode.